The cities and towns that have been struggling with trying to accommodate all of these kids over the last couple of years really ought to brace themselves for the coming, surge 2 that is already in progress.
That is Jennifer Vaughn, the Director of Policy Studies for the Center for Immigration Studies with Neil Cavuto on Fox, with a warning for us all. Since last summer, our nation has been trying to deal with a wave of illegal juveniles crossing our porous southern border. Some people thought that crisis was over, but as you just heard, get ready for the second surge. Since October 1st, more than 12,000 minors have come across our border with Mexico. You see the report on our parent website, newsmax.com. By the end of the year, that number is expected to increase to about 42,000. For more on this story, let's go deep to the heart of Texas, to the capital city of Austin, and talk to Texas Attorney General Ken Patton. General, what's being done in your state to try and stop this second surge?
Well, I know that they're putting more resources on the border. The legislature's in session right now, trying to pass legislation to fund more of our own DPS officers. Obviously, it'd be nice if the federal government put more people on the border. You're probably well aware that a lot of the Border Patrol agents are not on the border. They're actually 50 to 60 miles inland. And so we're trying to do what we can in Texas to stem the tide. And I agree with the assessment of the person you just had on, that we potentially have a coming problem, especially with the executive action issued by the president.
General Paxton, we understand that now the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is going to have a hearing about executive amnesty. Some law professors have said this kind of oral argument is unprecedented. Your take on what is expected in New Orleans next month?
We're actually pleased. We are looking forward to making our arguments. Obviously, you know the issue. The federal judge in the district court recently issued a stay and a preliminary injunction on the implementation of the executive action by the president in November. We're hopeful that the Supreme Court will keep that in place, and that it is unusual for this not to just be a paper action, but rather be a 2-hour oral argument in New Orleans.
Obviously, General Paxton, you won this job through an election at the ballot box. What do you hear from your constituents, from fellow Texans, about this problem, and more specifically about the president's unilateral executive amnesty that he's offering?
Well, we have an amazing Hispanic population in Texas, but in this state, people want the law followed. And the frustrating action by the president, taking existing law and unilaterally changing something that he said over and over 20 times that he didn't have the authority to change, is frustrating to my constituents. Whether you like the policy or not, the fact that he has unconstitutionally made new law is extremely frustrating to people in this state who care about the Constitution and who care about the rule of law.
A minute 30 remains in this particular segment, General Paxton, and we just saw a screen grab of an article from The Hill, the newspaper of Capitol Hill, and the headline reads, Texas AG accuses feds of misleading on immigrant work permits. General, what have you seen? What evidence is there of that type of misleading action?
So after we filed our case in December, we had our hearing in January, middle of January, and we were asking for this preliminary injunction. The administration told the judge, told us that they were not implementing currently, that they would not be implementing until February 18th. So we based our timing on that representation, and the judge also believed it. And so he issued his preliminary injunction on February 16th so that none of this would go into effect until we had the actual trial on the merits. Well, as it turns out, the Obama administration came back into a court recently and told us and told the judge, by the way, we weren't exactly upfront on this. We actually did implement, and over 100,000 people have been affected by this new executive action. And so we actually went back into court and asked for more discovery on this so we can figure out what else the administration hasn't told us. And we're hopeful that the judge will rule shortly.
And we're going to come back to talk more about what you've been told and what you haven't been told. Attorney General Ken Paxton of Texas stays with us. Back now on America's Forum to continue the conversation with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. General, we thank you for staying with us now. And as you were explaining what has gone on and this concern about being misled, I'm just wondering, does it translate into a legal action? I know the presiding judge, the federal judge in Brownsville, had some things to say. Is it conceivable that anybody from the Justice Department could be found in contempt of court by a federal judge, or worse, charged with perjury for misleading Texas on these items?
You know, we didn't initially ask for that. We initially asked for further discovery to find out fully what the administration has actually done, because now we're not sure, given the fact that they misled us on the first round. And so we're merely asking for more discovery. The judge actually pursued some of those issues in the hearing, asking about, sanctions and who would actually pay it. And I think the Justice Department said ultimately the taxpayers would pay it. I don't think that was very satisfying for the judge. But who knows? He is obviously a federal judge, and he can make his determinations as to what he wants to do, even if we didn't ask for it. So we'll see what happens in the next, hopefully the next week or so.
General, do you foresee sitting down with members of the Texas legislature or with your new governor, who's the former attorney general, to figure out something at the state level that would require some veracity from federal immigration officials and from the Justice Department?
We're not that far down the road. We're mostly right now focused on what's going on in the district court and at the Fifth Circuit. We'll actually probably make those types of determinations after we have a better idea of what the administration's actually done, because we're not sure. We still aren't sure if we've gotten the full story. And so that's why we've made these efforts to ask the judge for more information about what the Obama administration has done. So we're hopeful that we can find out the truth. That's all we're asking for.
You're new in this job. Obviously, you worked hard to get it, General, but in your wildest imaginings, did you expect to get this kind of misleading information from the federal government on a question this important?
Well, what's amazing to me is that, you've got an Obama administration, now that the election's over, that is in many different areas changing the law without any authority outside of their constitutional duty and in direct violation of federal law. I mean, this is an example of it. The law says one thing, they've changed it even after saying they couldn't, and here we are now in front of a federal court not getting accurate information. So truthfully, all of this is outside of what I would have expected from any president, and it's really shocking.
2 minutes remain, General, and I want to talk to you some not only about what goes on in a court of law, but also in terms of law enforcement. We're hearing that several law enforcement agencies are having a tough time filling positions, so they are turning to immigrants. Now, normally officers or deputies are required to be U.S. citizens, but some agencies are changing this, actually looking at applicants who have green cards. In your mind, is this a good thing to have happen, or do you have a real problem perhaps with identity theft and illegals becoming law enforcement officials?
Well, I mean, that's probably more of a federal issue, but I know in the state that is not. I don't think that's being done here. So what I focus on more is on state law and state issues, or any issues that affect Texas. So in the state of Texas, I don't believe that's going on here.
One of your county sheriffs just recently in the news said about half of his budget is going to the recovery of illegal aliens. At the state level, how big is this a challenge for you and your border counties?
Well, it's frustrating for us because we have to keep dedicating more and more resources to stopping this influx of illegals, and just look over at our Texas legislature. They're basically halfway through, and they're having to put hundreds of millions of dollars into border security that really the federal government should be paying for this, and the federal government should be doing their job. And unfortunately, that's just not the case, and it's forced us into a position of spending taxpayer dollars in Texas to do the job of the federal government.
Attorney General Ken Paxton, we thank you for Skyping in from Austin to give us the view of the challenges faced there in the Lone Star State, and we hope to talk to you again, especially in the wake of the upcoming oral hearing in the 5th District Court of Appeals. Coming up, Hour 3 of America's Forum, so stay with us.